The Taliban is not the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of an embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It is not at all comparable.
There is a lot of anger among Afghans. They feel that the United States abandoned them and left them to deal with the Taliban.
Biden, you're responsible! Biden, you're responsible! Biden, you're responsible! This is what Biden is going to take women to.
The United States waged a war on terror in Afghanistan for 20 years, but it took Taliban less than 2 months to overrun the US-trained Afghan forces and the government. The Taliban broke US military's might. And all this while, the United States kept on insisting that the Afghan forces are capable of handling the situation.
Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. But I trust the capacity of the Afghan military, who is better trained, better equipped, and more competent in terms of conducting war.
However, according to some reports, the US intelligence had always known that the Taliban would overrun the Afghan forces and the government. But what surprised the world is the speed at which the Taliban would seize the country. First, they thought it would take 18 months. Then they said 90 days. But Taliban took less than a week to capture Kabul. In fact, the US Pentagon maintained that Kabul was not in any imminent danger a day before it fell.
Kabul is not, right now, in an imminent threat environment.
Former US President Donald Trump, who presided over the US-Taliban peace deal, hit out at Joe Biden over the botched exit from Afghanistan and called for his resignation. A top Republican leader, Michael McCall, blasted Biden for overseeing an unmitigated disaster of epic proportions. However, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken told CNN that Trump left Biden in a tough spot with the peace deal.
Choice the president faced. Again, remember that a deadline was established by the previous administration of May 1st to get our remaining forces out of Afghanistan. And the idea that we could have sustained the status quo by keeping our forces there, I think, is wrong, because here's what would have happened if the president had decided to keep those forces there. During the period from when the agreement was reached to May 1st, the Taliban had ceased attacking our forces, ceased attacking NATO forces. It had also held off on this major offensive that we've seen now to try to take over the country, to go for these provincial capitals, which in recent weeks it has succeeded in doing. Come May 2nd, if the president decided to stay, all gloves would have been off. We would have been back at war with the Taliban. They would have been attacking our forces.
It took 9 rounds of discussions for the US and Taliban to sign the peace agreement in 2020. It addressed 4 main issues: ceasefire, withdrawal of foreign forces, intra-Afghan negotiations, counter-terrorism assurances. While the US says it had to keep its end of the bargain, the Taliban has not bothered to keep its promises. According to the Council of Foreign Relations, withdrawal of foreign forces was on the condition that Taliban follows through its commitment on ceasefire, talks with the Afghan government, and counter-terrorism assurances. During the months of the peace process, there was hardly any peace on the ground for Afghan civilians and the Afghan forces. And the Taliban still enjoys support from various terror organizations.
our own reports suggest that there are more than 20 foreign terrorist groups are operating, and some of them I could just mentioned Al-Qaeda, LET, TTP, IMU, ETIM, ISIL. I mean, these are all acronyms, but you can Google them and find out. It's not just that our government is saying this. The United Nations, the Security Council Monitoring Committee have also issued a report just recently in which they confirmed that Al-Qaeda is present in 15 provinces of Afghanistan. Let's not forget that these fighters are there for a reason for reciprocity. They will be demanding. They're helping Taliban today. Tomorrow they will be demanding a favor from the Taliban.
Now, Kabul has fallen to the Taliban, and so has the peace deal. The question remains whether the so-called negotiations were just a sham, a charade. Was it only to achieve a tactical goal for the United States coming out of war fatigue? Or did the pact only say that the Taliban will not hurt US personnel during the peace process? Because since May, the Taliban have targeted civilians, Afghan security personnel, government leaders, and even non-US journalists like Danish Siddiqui. But US security personnel or US citizens have not been the target of the Taliban. The United States Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad insists that the US still has leverage over the Taliban. Khalilzad said that the Taliban wants international recognition and does not want to be a pariah state. He said that the US and other nations can negotiate for fundamental rights in Afghanistan. On the other hand, the US's botched-up job in Afghanistan will go on to taint Biden's legacy. The history will also not forget the United States' treatment of its allies. Can the US be a trusted ally ever?